Shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all honor, praises, and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh, and I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world inwardly calls Jesus Christ. All right, it's Brother Lashanya from WFI Little Rock, coming back with another quick video, man. You know, I just wanted to touch on this topic because when you look at the world and how it's going, you know, you got Christianity, it's kind of getting popularized again. You know, you got a lot of people making music and trying to make it seem cool to be a Christian. You also got just a lot of things being exposed, right? A lot of things coming to the light, and people can tell, it's obvious and evident that we're living in dark days. We're living in the last times, right? We're living on the brink of the return of the Messiah, right? And with all of that going on, people, they're trying to, you know, cleave onto something that's going to give them protection, cleave onto something that gives them comfort, in which they think that they'll be protected whenever all hell breaks loose, whenever, you know, quote unquote, ish hits the fan, right? But the thing is, man, God, He doesn't want to be worshipped just any way, right? He gave us codes, regulations, aka laws, statutes, and commandments, right, to follow Him, man, to do what He wants us to do. We can't go in and try to establish our own relationship with God predicated on our own feelings. We're supposed to establish a relationship with God predicated on how He wants to be worshipped, on how He wants to be served, right? Not how we want to serve Him, right? I just want to kick it off again with the book of Mark, chapter 4, and verse 22, all right? Because, you know, we're living in the age of information. Whenever you can look up anything in 2 seconds, man. You have this thing called an iPhone or a phone, a smartphone, whatever you want to call it, and you can look up anything, right? It's all at the palm of your hands, man, right? And with that going on, we see a lot of things that's going on in the earth, man. Right back in the day, before telephones, before television, right? They didn't know what was going on the other side of the earth, man. But now we can get on social media and see 50,000 people over in Turkey get swallowed up in an earthquake. Or we can see hundreds of thousands of people dying in a war in Sudan. Or we can see drones getting dropped on Russians over there in Ukraine, right? So we're living in an age where information is everywhere, right? Truth is everywhere. This is the book of Mark, the book of Mark, chapter 4, verse 22. For there is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret, but that it should come abroad. Right? So there's nothing in this earth that is going to be kept hidden. At the end of the day, everything will be brought to the light. And that's why you have a lot of celebrities getting exposed. Right? You had the whole ordeal with the Epstein Island and all those celebrities and elitists, right, who attended the Epstein Island where there was known child sex trafficking going on, right? Nothing is hidden in these last days. And that's why, you know, Satanists, people who openly worship and believe in the spiritual demon Satan, they come out, they express their beliefs, right? And they know what's coming, right? But nevertheless, people who want to cleave unto God, people who want to do God's will, people who love God, you got to understand that God doesn't want to be worshipped just any type of way, right? We can't serve the Father any type of way. So let's go to the classic first, right? Let's go to Romans chapter 10 and verse 1. This is Romans 10 and 1. It says, brethren, I'm going to start at verse 2, all right? Romans 10 and 2. It says, for I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. And that's our people, especially in these last days when we see all of these things going on and taking place. Our people, we're zealous for God. We've always been zealous for God, but especially more seeing what's going on, we know that, you know, it's about to go down, right? Our people are zealous for God, meaning we have a love, a strong passion towards God. But what? It says, but not according to knowledge, right? It's not the correct way, man. That's what it means, man. It's not the proper way to serve the Father. Let's keep reading. Verse 3. For they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. Right? So that's what our people do. They're trying to establish their own righteousness, their own way to serve God, instead of submitting themselves unto God's righteousness, which is through his laws, statutes, and commandments, and through the words of his son. Right? Because even Christ, Yahweh Shai, he told us to keep the laws. He told us to keep the commandments. He did not come to do away with any of the commandments. Right? If anything, he made it stricter, more strict. Right? So that's the important thing to understand and to get through your head in these last days is, am I just doing whatever and saying I love God, or am I actually keeping God's laws? Am I actually keeping the commandments? Am I wearing my fringes? Right? Am I keeping the Sabbath day? Right? Am I, just the small things, man? Am I not eating shrimp, crab, pork, and lobster, man? Those are unlawful. God said he hates people who eats that, man. It's an abomination. Those animals were not meant for human consumption, right? So that's the thing you got to be asking yourself. Am I saying I love God and just doing whatever I want? Or am I actually striving to keep God's laws to the best of my ability? Because that's what God's looking at. Let's go to this in the book of 1 John, right? Slaki. Bear with me. 1 John, I believe it's chapter 2, right? Yeah, 1 John chapter 2 and verse 3. It says, "And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments." So that's how you know God. When you're keeping his commandments. You're doing his will by keeping his commandments. That's what he has pleasure in. Those are the people that he has pleasure in. Those that keep his commandments, right? It says what? Verse 4. "He that saith I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him." Right? And that's plain upon tables, man. You can't say that you know God, that you love God, but you're not keeping his commandments. Let's get there. Super classic, right? 1 John chapter 5 and verse 3. "For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. And his commandments are not grievous." There's not a grievous thing to keep God's commandments. That is how you show God love, man. You can't profess with your mouth all day that you love God, you want to serve God, you want to do the things that are pleasing to God, yet you're not doing any of them. You're going about trying to establish your own righteousness, right? Your own righteousness. Meaning what? You might have someone who says they believe in God, they love God. Okay, they don't cuss at all, right? Because that's what Christians look at. They look at the outer appearance and the outer man, right? Oh, he doesn't use swear words like the S word, or like the F word, right? That's a man that loves God. But you don't find anywhere in the Bible that we can't necessarily use those words, right? And I'm not saying just go up and down the street using profane language, right? Because that's against wisdom. But at the same time, a curse word is you throwing curses, meaning you wishing evil upon someone. That is a curse, right? Saying OS or F, like dang, whatever, man. That's not a sin. But you eating unlawful foods or you eating unclean things, that is a sin. You breaking the Sabbath day, not keeping the Sabbath day holy, you buying and selling, you working, you know what I'm saying? You don't even acknowledge the Most High Sabbath day, that is a sin. Right? You celebrating birthdays and celebrating all of these so-called holidays here in America, right, that are dedicated to these other gods, that is a sin. Right? But that's what Christians do. Because they're ignorant of it. They don't know that they're not supposed to be doing that. And even if they did find out that they're not supposed to be doing that, they continue to do it because they think that, they're covered by the blood of Christ. But let me get this. I'm going to get 2 scriptures on that. Because, yeah, I'm going to get a few examples of people who went about trying to establish their own righteousness, trying to please God, how they felt like God wanted to be pleased. and God was very displeased in their actions, right? That's the same thing our people are doing to this very day. All right, let me get this real quick. The book of Romans, chapter 6, right? Romans chapter 6 and verse 1. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein, man? Right? Why? Because Christ died so that we can have repentance, so that we can stop sinning. So why would we continue to sin and abuse and neglect the grace that we've been given through the Messiah's death, man? Right? You read in the book of Hebrews, the 10th chapter and the 26th verse, right on down, about the punishment that people are going to receive for neglecting and abusing the grace of Christ, man. They're going to get judged worse than they would during the time of Moses, right? Getting judged under the Mosaic law, right? Because back then, you know, you'll get capital punishment for being an adulterer, for being an adulteress, for being a murderer, right? You didn't have a second chance. But through Hamashiach Yahushai, we've been gifted that second chance, right? And if you want to abuse that second chance, these opportunities that we've been given to come back to God in sincerity and in truth, then that punishment you're going to get for that is worse than that capital punishment that you would receive in the time of Moses during and under the Mosaic law, right? Nevertheless, I just want to get into a couple of these examples, right, of men who went about trying to establish their own righteousness. Let's get the book of Leviticus chapter 10, right? Because the point is, hopefully I'm conveying this well enough to where, you know, just the average person can understand that God doesn't want to be worshipped any type of way, right? He has codified laws, statutes, and commandments on how he wants to be served, right? And when you're going against that, but you're saying that you love God, that makes you a liar. Like I said, and the truth is not in you, right? So I just want that to be clear, man, right? It's the book of Leviticus, chapter 10. Oh, so I'm in the wrong book. Yeah, Leviticus, chapter 10 and verse 1, right? And it reads, Leviticus 10 and 1. It says, And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them his censer, and put fire therein, and put incense thereon, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not. So you got Abihu and Nadab, right? Those are the sons of Aaron, right? They're priests, man, right? Their charge is to go into the temple and to light the incense unto the Lord, right? But what did they do this day? They lit the wrong incense before the Lord, right? And what happened? Verse 2. And there went out fire from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. You see that? So, Salakia. Yeah. So they died before the Lord, man, because they offered strange incense before the Lord. They did what the Most High commanded them not. They thought that they were doing the right thing by offering this incense to the Lord, even though that's not what he commanded them to do. Right? He said, I don't want you to do that. Right? And what happened? They got put to death for that. So that's one example, man. Imagine you light in the wrong incense, and next thing you know, man, you just get consumed with fire. Because that's what happened to these men, to these brothers, man, who went about trying to establish their own righteousness before God. All right, let's get another example. 1 Samuel. Right, Salaki. You know, these heathen, man. These heathen, man. Alright, Salaki. Let's get this real quick. 1 Samuel chapter 6. Right? 2 Samuel chapter 6, matter of fact, right? All right, come on. This book is 2 Samuel chapter 6, and I'm going to start at the top, all right? It says, Again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judah from Baal of Judah to bring up from thence the ark of God. Right? So this is during the time where the ark, it got taken, right, from the Israelites, and they had to go get it back. All right. It says, to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, that dwelt between the cherubims. And they set the ark of God upon a new cart. So they got the ark of God. If you don't know what the ark of God is, after this little lesson, man, just look it up, right? Just go research what the ark of God is, right? Salakia. It says, and they set the ark of God upon a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart. So they put it on a new cart, right? Quick. So they put the ark of God upon this cart, right? They're about to push it back to Israel, all right? It says, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah, accompanying the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps, and on psalteries, and on timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals, right? So, man, they're turning up. They just retrieved the ark. They headed back to Israel, man. They're turning up. They're playing all manner of music. You know what I'm saying? They're having a good time, right? Verse 6. And when they came to Nacon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. Right? So again, you got this ox. He's the one that's carrying this ark, which is on that cart, right? So it hit a bump. Right? You can say it hit a bump or something. Either way, man, the ark started shaking or whatever, man. It looked like it was finna fall off. And what happened? Right? Because, okay, so Salaki, what happened was Uzzah, this man named Uzzah, right? This man named Uzzah, he tried to catch the ark before it fell. So he put his hand on it and he took hold on it, right? Verse 7. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him, there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. Right? So he died because he tried to catch the ark of the covenant before it fell, man. He thought he was doing the right thing, man. He thought he was doing God a favor because, you know, the Ark of the Covenant, it's not just some table, man. Right? This is where they put the 2 tablets of stone that Moses had the 10 commandments on, man. That he came down to Mount Sinai, which God wrote with his fingers, the commandments to give Israel, man. And they had the 2 tablets in there, man. Right? So Uzzah thought he was doing the right thing by catching the ark before he fell. But guess what? He's not a Levite. He didn't have the charge of the Ark of the Covenant. It wasn't his responsibility. It wasn't his duty, right? He was out of order, out of place for touching the Ark of the Covenant, man. And he got put to death, even though he thought he was doing the right thing. That is the message that I'm trying to convey to our people, right? We can't serve God however we feel like he wants to be served. He already told us how he wants to be served. And we have to follow that, man. Right? With all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. Right? I want to get one more example. Right? One more example. 1 Samuel chapter 15, right? We all know about Saul. Hopefully, if you say you're Christian, if you say you're religious, if you say you believe in God or whatever, you should know about Saul, man, the first king of Israel, right? It's the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, and I'm going to start at verse 17, right? And Samuel said, when thou wast little in thine own sight, wast thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel? Right, so Saul was anointed king, right? It says, and the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Right? He said, the Lord sent Saul on a journey to go slay these Amalekites, man. He said, don't leave baby, don't leave women, don't leave man, don't leave oxen, don't leave nothing, man. Slay it all utterly, right? He said, verse 19, wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but did fly upon the spoil and did evil in the sight of the Lord, right? So he said, why didn't you do it, man? Why didn't you listen to God and slay everything? Why did you go and run upon the spoil, meaning the goods, the treasures, and the oxen that was left over? Why'd you do that? Verse 20, and Saul said unto Samuel, yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. So what happened was, he thought he was doing the right thing. He said, well, I did obey the voice of the Lord. I went over there to Amalek, and I slew all them Amalekites, and I took the king of Amalek, Agag, and I brought him with me, and the people, you know what I'm saying, they did what they wanted to do with the sheep and the oxen and the chief things, and it is what it is. That's what Saul said, man. Verse 22, and Samuel said, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Because what the people were planning on doing, they're like, oh, the Lord, he just gave us this great victory. We're about to take all the chief of the sheep and of the oxen, the best ones, and we're going to sacrifice them unto the Lord, to show that we're thankful for what he did for us. That was their plan, right? But Samuel said what? He said, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? So he's saying it's better to obey the Lord than to offer, whatever it is to the Lord, because their intentions might have been in the right place, but it was wrong. It was wrong according to what God wanted, man. He said what? He said, behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hear, and to hearken than the fat of rams. So it's better to sacrifice than it's better to obey than to offer all of these sacrifices. Because you might say you love God. You might, pray 20 times a day. Right? You might give your church all the tithes and alms in the world. Right? You may do all of this, but yet you don't keep any of God's commandments, man. Right? So what God are you actually praying to? Right? Who are you really, who is your alms for, man? What God is that for? Because it's not the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because he just said it's better to obey, meaning follow God's direct instructions. And when you go into what Torah means, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, Torah, it literally means instruction, right? It's better to follow God's instruction than to sacrifice, or to offer the offering of fools, man. Because that's what it is. You're praying 20 times a day, but you're not keeping any of the commandments. God's not hearing that prayer, man. God's not acknowledging that, because you're trying to serve God however you feel like he wants to be served, and not how he wants to be served, man. So what ended up happening to Saul? Right? Again, 1 Samuel 15 and 22, it says, and Samuel said, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness as the iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast what's that say? It says, because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king. And that's the point, right? Our people, they're rejecting the word of the Lord, man. And if we continue to reject the word of the Lord will reject us. And in that day, Yahweh said, hey, depart from me, ye workers of iniquity. Those are the people that are going to be saying, Lord, Lord. We were calling on your name this whole time. We were casting out many devils in your name. We were doing many great works in your name. But you really weren't. You were going about trying to establish your own righteousness, man. and God is not dealing with that. I'm just going to get a couple more scriptures and I'm going to close out. Right? It's the book of Proverbs, right? Chapter 16, verse 25, right? Proverbs 16 and 25. It says, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. That's plain upon tables, man. You might think that you're doing the right thing, but the end thereof is death, man, and destruction. So with all of this being said, man, you just got to take that moment, examine yourself, see whether or not what you're doing is actually pleasing unto God, right? Is it actually pleasing unto God? Is this what God told me to do? Is this what God told me, the way that I need to be living my life? Is this what it is? Or am I just doing whatever I feel is right in my heart? Because that's what a lot of people go off of. They just go off their emotions, their feelings, right? But let me get this precept. The classic. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 17 and verse 4. Jeremiah 17 and 4. And thou, Jeremiah 17 and 9, right? It says, the heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked, who can know it? So the heart is deceitful above all things. Your emotions, your feelings is deceitful above all things, man. There's nothing like it. Your emotions can lead you astray. They will lead you astray every time. That's why you can't lean upon your own understanding, like it says in Proverbs 3 and 5, right? So you just got to trust in the Lord, get in his word, and evaluate yourself according to his word, man. And that's all you got to do, because the whole duty of man, Ecclesiastes 12 and 13 tell you, the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments, right? And that's it. Fear God and keep his commandments. Have that faith in Hamashiach Yahushua, who the world calls Christ, man. Have that faith, right? Keep the commandments. Don't go about trying to establish your own righteousness in ignorance, right? Because that will get you destroyed, man. That will get you put to death. Your heart you might think your heart is in the right place, but not according to God's will, man. Right? So that's the point. That's the message. Lord willing, this video is edifying, to at least one soul. And with that, I just want to say, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Right? Make sure you gird it up in these last days. You're repenting, right? You're seeking God. You're reading, you're studying, you're fasting, you're praying, doing everything you can to make your calling and election sure. And most importantly, man, make sure you're fearing God and keeping these commandments, all right? With that, Shalom.